What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel. Just kind of a fun little video topic I wanted to do, and I've been wanting to do it for a while. Just something that's a break from sports, and that's going to be my top 5 favorite Christmas movies of all time. I think we all need a little break from sports. The Mariners have, I can't refresh Twitter without there being some thing that this ownership group is doing that I can't even understand. The Seahawks haven't won since 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. If you're from Seattle, you're a Kraken fan. They've been struggling. My Yotes are lost 3 in a row. I'm not a UW fan, but obviously that's exciting news for a lot of you guys. But yeah, not a lot going on that's overly positive right now in the sports world. So I thought I'd mix it up with this video. If you're new here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I'm on the road to 3,000. And if you guys could please do me a favor and hit the like button as well, that just, again, helps the video out tremendously. I want to be very clear. This is my personal top 5. So, if your top 5 is totally different, all good. This is just personal preference. This isn't a personal thing or anything. I'm also not a movie critic or film critic or taken really any film courses of any type. So for me, it's like, well, Jay, technically in that scene in Home Alone 11, when he enters the door is not meant to be symbolic. Well, whatever. I don't care. This is just my top 5 Christmas movies of all time. So I'm going to do my top 5. I'll mix in some honorable mentions that I think are good movies that aren't in my top 5. And I'm also going to talk about some of the Christmas movies I don't really like. So again, just get into it. I thought it'd be a fun kind of topic to do. Make sure to let me know your top Christmas movies in the comments down below. And let's get into it with number 5. And that is going to be Elf, starring Will Ferrell. Came out in 2003, I believe. So I didn't see Elf when it first came out. I was in high school at the time, so I was watching Christmas movies with my family. It was always the older movies that my parents enjoyed. And when I was hanging out with my buddies, in high school, we weren't going to see movies like Elf in the theaters. That wasn't cool when you're 16, 17 years old. And as I got older, it was just, I got married and started a family. It was just never a movie that really caught my attention too much. And I think I'm not a huge Will Ferrell fan, actually. I think he's funny, like nothing wrong with him, but I don't know, he just doesn't really do it for me. So it's never really a movie that I wanted to get into. And I'm going to be honest, and you might say, well, Jay, it's PG. How'd you think this? But I saw Will Ferrell. I saw a movie about an elf, and I thought it was going to be kind of like a very raunchy, over the top type movie. Now that can work, like another raunchy type kind of raunchy movie, Christmas Vacation, may be appearing on my list, but it just wasn't something that appealed to me really. And for the holidays, it didn't really jump out to me. So I just think it would be good. And then one day, I don't remember where I was, and we were sitting down. It was on TV or someone put it on one of the streaming services. I watched it and I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it had just the right amount of serious but humor, and also just it's a movie that makes you feel good. Like when I watch Elf, and most Christmas movies are like that. That's kind of what they're meant to do. But it's just a really warm feeling movie. And there's some Christmas movies that don't have that they might have a good message, but they're not warm. This movie gives me a very warm, Christmassy feeling to it. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of Will Ferrell, but I think he's perfect in this role as Buddy. And a character that I thought could be really annoying is just the right amount of annoying. Like there's nothing where I'm like cringing at the character. And sometimes those characters, whether it's Buddy, Beetlejuice, those kind of fast talking over the top characters, sometimes they can get a little grating and they can get annoying throughout a movie. And to me, surprisingly, Will Ferrell doesn't do that in this movie. He does a good job of keeping it um, over the top, but over the top for what it needs to be. Um, I think it's an extremely well casted movie. I love Bob Newhart, the Newhart Show, and Newhart, where he owns the inn in Connecticut, are two of my favorite sitcoms of all time. He's great as Papa Elf. That kind of just dry, wry humor that Bob Newhart has is perfect in there. Ed Asner's a great Santa Claus. That's like a perfect fit to play Santa. James Caan does a good job of, like, he's not really funny in the movie, but he plays off of Will Ferrell's funniness as the straight man really well. It's kind of like how I think anybody would react to someone like that in real life. The kid that plays James Caan's character's other son is good, kind of the typical 12, 13-year-old boy. Like he's good hearted, he's not annoying. You can see some cynicalness in him, but that's normal for 12, 13. Um, Zoe Deschanel is really good in the movie as well. She's got a good energy. And I think good chemistry with Will Ferrell in the movie. So it's just a really warm, lighthearted movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also doesn't go so silly where it's just so over the top where you can't take it seriously, if that makes sense. Again, I'm not a film critic, but it finds just that right balance of what a movie like that should be. Like I said, it doesn't go too over the top whimsical, but it's whimsical in the right moments. I love the ending. It's got a really good heart to it. I think Jon Favreau directed that movie, so really good. Elf is number 5 on my list. Number 4 is the aforementioned Christmas Vacation. And you're gonna say, well, Jay, you just said raunchy. I just didn't with Elf when I first saw it. I'm like, I don't know, Will Ferrell raunchy Elf. It didn't appeal to me until I watched and realized that's not what it was. Christmas Vacation is just a classic, and you know what? I don't think it actually is a very raunchy, over the top movie. I think, all the vacation movies are great, but the first one in Wally World, there's definitely some kind of weird, raunchy scenes when they go meet Eddie and just some stuff like that. European Vacation definitely gets a little raunchy, but Christmas Vacation is a little bit more subdued. I think there's the rant at the end where Clark goes off and screams all the cuss words and everything. And I'm not trying to be like all holier than that. I'm fine with cussing and stuff in movies. Sometimes in a Christmas movie, though, it's a fine line. And I think Christmas Vacation walks it very well. You've still got that kind of derogatory humor that can make you laugh, but it never goes too far. It still respects that it is a Christmas movie. And it's another movie, like I said with Elf, it's got a lot of heart. Christmas Vacation, I think, has a lot of heart. You can relate to it, as a dad, if you're a dad or just a family person trying to put together that big Christmas with everybody. It's probably going to stink, but you want everybody there because you want to have your family there. You want your kids to see that. Um, him doing the lights on the house, not only hilarious, but just, you respect he's trying. Like you look at Clark in that movie, go, man, he is trying to give his family the best Christmas ever. And he's such a likable character in that sense. I mean, Clark Griswold's great in all the movies, but especially, in this one, it's just, and he's not perfect by any means. And like he goes on that huge rant at the end, certainly not appropriate. But that's the point. Like he doesn't have to be perfect. And that's the conversation he has with his dad at the end. Like, it's no one's expecting that perfection from you. So it's got a good heart, a good message. Another movie that's really well casted. Randy Quaid's hilarious as Eddie. Obviously Chevy Chase is great, in his role as Clark Griswold in all the movies. The kids are well cast in this movie. Obviously Russ and Audrey are always a different actress. I think it's Juliette Lewis, and I think it's, what's his face from Big Bang Theory. I'm not a big fan of Big Bang Theory, but Johnny Galecki plays Russ. And they're really good chemistry. They play off the parents really well. I mean, obviously a hilarious movie. I'm talking about it. It's good sentiment. It's got a good heart, but it's also really funny. I mean, some of the best scenes. I love the opening scene is hilarious when they're singing "Take It, Russ," and he doesn't sing, and they're going out getting the Christmas tree and the truckers and all that. I mean, just a perfect opening for that. I love the feud with the neighbors is hilarious. They have some great lines. Todd and Margot. I don't know who plays Todd, but Margot's Elaine from Seinfeld, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's great in those roles. They're perfect as the stuck-up neighbors. Like I said, Eddie's hilarious. The in-laws are all well casted and funny, and just there's good chemistry with all the characters in the movie. Brian Doyle Murray's hilarious as the boss. And I love when Eddie kidnaps him and he ties him in the bow and all that. And it's a hilarious movie, but I think it has good heart too. It's not just raunchy, funny, shock humor type comedy. It's got good character. Oh, and the old grandpa that, that has the toupee and is always smoking the cigar. Lewis is hilarious as well. Bethany doing the, Pledge of Allegiance for the prayer and all that stuff. So they're hilarious. They're not in the movie long at the end, but they are hilarious. So probably, I think out of all the movies on the list, the only, I think they're all, I mean, actually, I was about to say the only comedy. Elf's a comedy. All these movies are comedies, but I think probably the most comedy, maybe. I don't know. Elf's kind of a comedy, but yeah, they did a great job. And again, like, I like too that in this one, in the first vacation they go to Wally World in California. Second one they're in Europe, and the last one they're in Vegas. I like that they're at home in this one. It again gives it more of that holiday feel. So I thought that was a good call to do that in the movie. But definitely one of my favorites. You can't go a Christmas without watching Christmas Vacation. Number 3 on my list is Home Alone. Home Alone. Everybody loves Home Alone. I almost didn't have it on my list. And the reason why I actually put it back on is because I've seen Home Alone more times than I care to imagine. I could probably reenact the movie for you. I could probably reenact most of these movies, but I could do Home Alone for you scene by scene right now. I am tired of seeing Home Alone. But I had to say, okay, that's whose fault is that? That's my fault for having seen it so many times. It's not the movie's fault. Um, it, Home Alone is another movie that does a great job of taking a premise that's over the top and could be very silly and done very dumb and making it very serious, but still having comedy. Like a premise of leaving the kid at home could have done one of two things when you have a movie like that. It could either been so silly that it's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. Or it could have been so dramatic that you're like, oh my God, this poor kid. Now, obviously, like, yeah, the parents leaving the kid at home is bad, but they do a good job of balancing it out with, yeah, this is serious, but there's still a lot of funny interactions that come with it. And another movie with a lot of heart and character. As I'll say with all these movies, extremely well casted as usual. Obviously, Macaulay Culkin, fantastic as Kevin, and very glad to see that he's getting his life back in line after I believe he had some drug issues as a younger kid. And that's, I would never allow my children to be involved, and not that they have a chance to, but like I would never let them be involved in Hollywood. It's just way too much. You hear way too many horror stories, like even back in the day with like Judy Garland with Wizard of Oz and all that stuff, and how they treat these children in Hollywood is terrible. But Macaulay Culkin is so good because Kevin, child actors it's very fine line. It is a very fine line with kids in movies because they can be really annoying in certain movies where you're like, you see this kid that wants something for Christmas in a movie. And you're like, kid, I can't stand you. I don't want you to get what you want for Christmas. You are driving me nuts. And Macaulay Culkin does a good job as Kevin here. And maybe it's the directing as well of getting a kid that, yeah, he's got some annoyingness to him where you're like, he can be a little bit of a brat at times, but he's kind of just a normal kid. You're not rooting against him in this movie. And it's hard when your main character in a movie is a kid because kids can be, I have kids. I got 3 of them. Love them to death. Sometimes they can be annoying. We all know that if you got kids, right? Like, and especially in movies they can be so annoying. A movie I'm not going to have on my top 5, and not a bad movie, is The Santa Claus. I love it. I like Tim Allen. He's great as Santa. But Charlie kind of annoys me in that movie. He's kind of just an annoying kid. Nothing, I'm not picking on a kid or anything, but he's annoying. Jingle All the Way, another one that's on my list. That kid, super annoying. That's the kid from Star Wars who I know was bullied and stuff. So not picking on them. And maybe it was the directors and stuff. But I'm not rooting for the kids in those movies. I find them annoying. I am rooting for Kevin in Home Alone. He's relatable, especially if you're a kid. And Home Alone came out when I was a kid. And man, if you're, around my age in that time, everybody was quoting the "I don't think so" stuff when you went to school. Like everyone was quoting Kevin McAllister, and Home Alone became the formula for all kids movies. Everybody that made kids movies tried to do this at the end of the movie where the bad guys get, knocked around and beat up. Every movie tried it, but nobody duplicated it. Like Home Alone did. So Macaulay Culkin's fantastic. And like I said, another really well casted movie. The parents are great. I think it's Catherine O'Hara and John Hurd as the parents. That they do a nice job of again balancing the comedy, but with being serious parents. And again, a storyline that is not very believable. Leaving your kid at home, come on, like that wouldn't happen. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it would happen. but they do a good job, like I said, of making that believable in that universe, essentially. I know some people have some critiques like, oh, why wouldn't Kevin go to the police and stuff? And why didn't he answer the door for them? Why didn't he go next door or anything? Well, remember, a lot of the neighbors are out of town. And also remember, the premise is he thinks he made his parents disappear. Now, the second one I have beefs with. I'm not going to talk too much about Home Alone 2. The second one doesn't make any sense why he wouldn't just go back to the airport and be like, hey, I got separated. But in the first one, he wishes his family to go away. So he thinks he's the reason they're all gone. That's why he doesn't answer the door for the police or anything like that, is because he thinks he's the reason that his parents are gone. So parents are great. The old man next door, I don't remember if they gave him a name. I mean, that's a tear-jerking scene. Great scene in the church when they finally talk. And then it's hard not to shed a little tear at the end when you see him reunite with his son and his granddaughter. Very poignant and very real, right? Like, now I will say, like, Kevin's probably a little too mature in the movie for, I think he's supposed to be 8 or 9. He talks a little more 12, 13, 14 than he does 8, 9, but it's still believable. Like, even in the church, he uses his, I think it's the second one, he talks about the roller skates. I forgot what he talks about in the first one, to be honest. But it is believable. He kind of uses, oh, the pajamas and getting beat up and everything. Like, he still has that kid logic, but he makes good sentimental points, which kids will do a lot. Their logic is sometimes a little flawed, but you go, yeah, that's kind of fair. I understand that. And the old man, like I said, very relatable. You know, you sometimes dig yourself into a hole as an adult, and it's hard to say sorry sometimes. And the holidays is the best time to do that. And then we got to talk about Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. Obviously, you know, to talk about how great Macaulay Culkin was, but Pesci and Stern are fantastic as the Wet Bandits. But again, they do a good job. It's not over the top silly. Yeah, the pratfalls at the end and everything are obviously silly. And yeah, as I talked about Kevin being realistic, like, no 9-year-old be able to plan that. You know, Family Guy and Robot Chicken has made fun of that already a ton. But again, you got to suspend a little disbelief in all these movies. We're also talking about movies where Santa Claus is real, so you've got to dispense a little bit of reality in those. But what they do a great job of, again, with the Wet Bandits is they're not over the top silly where you're like, okay, like, no one's scared of these guys, but they're not also so scary where kids are watching the movies and they're nervous. Like, there's a sense of, yeah, these guys are serious. You don't want to mess with them, but they're also funny enough that your kids can watch it and get a ton of laughs out of it. And I believe for Pesci, this was right after Goodfellas. So, I don't remember, I was a kid, so I just loved it. It must have been kind of shocking though to see Joe Pesci in a role like that, but he's perfect as Harry. Marv, Daniel Stern is hilarious. And then, of course, last thing I'll say about the movie, man, he's in it for 3 minutes, but John Candy, again, legendary. We talk about people that were just taken from us way too soon as actors. John Candy, to me, is like number one of that. I don't think I've seen a John Candy movie that doesn't make me feel good. Uncle Buck, Great Outdoors, Cool Runnings. I know there's countless more, but just off the top of my head there. And just another guy that steals the show. He's in the movie for 5 minutes is Gus Polanski, I think, the Polka King of Chicago. But just great interaction. And you just get that, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, another great John Candy movie, which I think was also John Hughes who did Home Alone. And he's always in John Hughes movies. But yeah, John Candy, just so warm, energetic, but funny too. Like, he's in it for 5 minutes. You get that warm John Candy feel. You laugh a bunch of times. I love his story about the kid in the funeral home. And he's like, hey, talk to us about 6 months later. And then she's like, okay. He's like, well, you asked. So, he's hilarious. But Home Alone's great. For a concept that could have been either done way too silly or way too serious, they find that right balance. Let's move on to number 2, and then I'll do some honorable mentions, and I'll get to number 1. Number 2, you're going to laugh at me, A Muppets Christmas Carol. Now, hear me out on this. Truthfully, I think you could put any Christmas Carol adaptation in here. Like, I haven't seen them all. I've seen the George C. Scott one. I don't remember a lot of it. And I've seen Muppets, 50 times. So I'm putting the Muppets here. It's the one I've seen the most. And again, it falls into that category of this could have been such a silly, silly movie to do. Muppets Christmas Carol. It could have been stupid, and yes, it's got some of the Muppet silliness in there with the, how would Scrooge yells at them about unemployment because it's cold and they'd sing that, this is my island in the sun. Like, yeah, there's silly things in there. It's the Muppets. but they honor the source material really well. They take it seriously. They do a nice job of it. They don't make it, yeah, there's moments where you laugh, but there's nothing where it's not done in the right context. There's nothing that isn't faithful to, well, I mean, there's a lot of things not faithful, I guess. You got Muppets running around and Bob Cratchit isn't a frog, but in real life or in the book, but you know what I mean? Like for what they have, again, they do a good job of taking it very seriously. I love Michael Caine. I love Michael Caine in almost everything. Um, so good as Alfred in the Batman movies and countless other movies, but just a perfect Ebenezer Scrooge. He captures what I think Scrooge is supposed to be. He's not a villain. He is a man that has had loss and heartbreak and is cold. He's turned himself off. You can sit there and say what you want, but we've all been there to an extent, right? We've all had moments where we've been done with everything and we want to shut down and be done. And, you know, most of us, the good thing is we have people around us or we're able to pull out of it very quickly. Scrooge just unfortunately wasn't. In some ways, almost a kind of a Darth Vader type character arc, right? More of a tragic hero. Than a villain, and he's attached himself to his work, and his work is the only thing in his mind that gives him any worth. Instead of seeing, you know, the love he can have from people around him when his nephew comes over. But again, what makes Michael Caine so great is he captures that. He's not just a cold heart. I mean, he's cold hearted as Scrooge, but you can kind of see innocence in there. I love the scene when and he's with the ghost of Christmas past, and he's seeing the you know, him and his ex-girlfriend that ended up breaking up. There used to be a song that was in that, but they've taken it out since I've rewatched it. I don't know why. I didn't think it was a bad song or anything. I think the girl's voice was kind of weird or something, people said. I don't remember it too well, but whatever. But you see him watching that, and you just you look at Michael Caine looking at his his younger self as Scrooge, and gosh, you see the heartbreak on Michael Caine's face as Scrooge. You see the pain having to see this again. And it's so sad because it's not that Scrooge is mean to her. He's not, he's wrong, but he's not, he's doing what he thinks is best. And at the time he thinks is best is to focus on their business. We can't get married. I don't have the money. You know, again, we've all been there. I can tell you my advice would be you're never going to have enough money to be married and have kids. So if you want to do it, do it. But, you know, in the movie, you see that. And, you know, at the time when you're young, you don't realize that if you let that true love get away or something pass you by and you're focused on your work, when you're 22, 23, you don't see it. But now that he's in his 50s or 60s, he's looking back on it and you see that pain in his face. And they do a good job. Too, that another scene is when I love the Ghost of Christmas Present. I love that they added that he has like a memory issue. I thought that was kind of a cute and memory issue isn't cute, but like a nice little touch to the character. And it kind of makes sense that he's in the present. But the scene when, you know, he's watching them have, you know, Christmas dinner and you know, he's like, that's it's such a small feast and tells him it's very much appreciated. And then, you know, you know, Scrooge has to go as a Christmas present. Is Tiny Tim going to die? And he throws his words back at him. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if that's in the book or not. I haven't read the book in a while. But I love that Ghost Chris President throws that back in his face and says, well, he better do it. Decrease the surplus population, something Scrooge had mentioned earlier in the movie. And seeing that, you know, you see Michael Caine's face in that and seeing how it hits him, having it thrown back in you. And again, I think it's something we can all relate to. We've all said things, right? We've all, maybe not quite to Scrooge's level, but we've all been there. And then when you see the fruits of your actions, is when it really hits you. And the other thing I love about Michael Caine is his interaction with the Muppets. It's not silly. He does a good job of, and maybe that was the directors, I don't know, but he does a good job of taking it very seriously. And you don't feel like he's talking to puppets. You feel like he is in the movie, interacting with people, as well. A couple other scenes I love in the movie too, or one other scene at the very end. Obviously, you know, Scrooge has his redemption. I love the scene where I think it's Beaker and Bunsen. I don't remember the guy that goes me 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 all the time. Uh, Sorry for that terrible impression. He gives him the scarf, and again, it's Michael Caine. It's also Scrooge, whoever you want to give credit to. I know the same person, but you know, the character and the actor in that sense, you see in their eyes how much that's appreciated. It's after Scrooge goes up to him and tells him he's going to donate to their charity. And they're like, we wish we had something to give you. And I think it's Beaker just has the scarf around his neck and hands it to Scrooge. And the look in Michael Caine's eyes and Scrooge's eyes as he accepts it's just so heartwarming. And you can tell, like, this is a man that's never been given a gift. And who knows, that scarf might have been a piece of junk. Like, I don't know. It might have been I was going to say $2 scarf. That probably a lot back then, but it might have been worth nothing. But just the fact you could see that, like, somebody thought enough of him to give him something. And Michael Caine does a great job. Just his facial expressions and reactions. There's silly moments. It's the Muppets. Like, it's going to be silly. That's what the Muppets kind of are. But even in all the other Muppet movies, they do a good job of balancing humor, but still making it, serious enough and pretty faithful to the source material. I love A Christmas Carol in general. I love redemption arcs in movies. I love, those are some of my favorite characters, like Ebenezer Scrooge, one of my favorite, whether it's cinema or literature, one of my favorite characters of all time. I love Darth Vader, because when you first watch I'm not going to go on a Star Wars rant here, but Darth Vader's a villain. Turns out he's more of a tragic hero. I love those redemption arcs in movies because it mimics life a lot. Maybe, movies and books can take you to an extreme, but, we've all been there to some extent. All right. So I'm going to give a couple honorable mentions and to two newer Christmas movies. And then I want to talk about two movies that I really don't like at all. Actually, three. And then I'll get to my number one. So the two honorable mentions I want to talk about, they're fairly new, is Christmas Chronicles that came out, I think, in 2018. Now, I know there's a second one as well. I didn't really like the second one as much. Like the first one, it's just not in my top five yet. Maybe it's too new. Kurt Russell plays Santa. Really, really good Santa. He's got kind of a different vibe to it. He's a little bit more, I don't know, I could say more like a more relaxed and not relaxed, but I don't know, just more of a chill Santa, but he does a real good job. It's still like Santa. You still get that vibe from him. Kurt Russell's another really good one. He's great in that role. The kids are good. It's another movie with, I think, good kid actors that aren't annoying. The brother and sister in that movie are really good. I love that the brother's kind of story arc in the movie. And it's another movie that does a good job balancing the whimsical, but not going too over the top, but getting you right here a little bit at the end as well. So if you haven't checked out, I'd recommend Christmas Chronicles. I would also recommend 8-Bit Christmas with NPH, Neil Patrick Harris. Christmas Chronicles, I believe, is on Netflix, and 8-Bit Christmas is on HBO Max. It's essentially, I mean, you could call it a Christmas Story ripoff if you wanted to, but as someone that kind of grew up in that era wanting a Nintendo, I can relate to it. But it's got a little bit of a twist ending. I know some people didn't like it. I did. I thought it was a very moving moment. And another movie that it's not hilarious, but it's kind of a good slice of life, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. And it's another movie where I enjoy the kids in the movie. I think they're normal kids. They're not annoying. I think they talk a little too modern for what kids in the 80s would have talked like, but who cares? It's not the point of the movie. Steve Zahn, I think, is great as the dad in that movie, and a really, really touching ending. I will say it kind of goes from this comedy to this, like, oh my gosh, I want to cry now at the end of it a little bit. I won't spoil it, but check out 8-Bit Christmas. So I'd recommend those two as two of the newer ones. Couple Christmas movies I do not like. I cannot stand. Now, I haven't seen the new animated Grinch, the one that came out a few years ago, so I can't comment on it. I cannot stand the Jim Carrey Grinch. I'm actually not a big Jim Carrey fan in general. It just, his type of humor is very, physical comedy, maybe. Like, he can be funny at times. I don't hate him or anything. I don't really hate anybody, but the thing with me about the Grinch, the little cartoon in the book is perfect. It's just a little heartwarming tale of someone that doesn't like Christmas, thinks he's going to take all the presents and they're going to hate it too. And then he sees that this town doesn't focus on the material possessions. They're happy that they're with each other, with their families. That's all they need on Christmas. And he realizes that it wasn't the material possessions, and that makes his heart grow. And he becomes, like, okay, I can love this. You go to the movie and it's like, oh, he was bullied as a child. I don't care about the Grinch's childhood. That wasn't the point of it. So I can't stand that movie. I think it is like all these movies, even the ones I don't like, I can normally watch as Christmas movies. that one I can't watch. If it's on, I'm leaving the room. It just is, it's annoying to me, and I don't care about the Grinch's backstory. Oh, and also real quick, this list, my top five, doesn't include any of the like the cartoon stuff. So you've got the Grinch, you have all those stop motion Rudolph movies. Those just aren't included in here. That would be a separate video. You got a lot of like Mickey Mouse cartoons. I'm including more just feature length films, just FYI. Another movie I don't really like, and this might be the controversial one. Well, actually, I'll talk about another one before I get in the controversial one. Another one I don't really like is Jingle All the Way. I don't hate it as much as The Grinch. I can watch it. But again, super annoying kid. Seeing Arnold get beat up is kind of funny, but it is so Looney Tune-ish over the top that it just doesn't, I don't know. It just goes so crazy. Where it's like he's getting beat up by Santas. He's in a fight with Sinbad. He's not a very good parent. He misses his kid's thing in the beginning, which happens. Then he tries to buy the kid off, and then he forgets the gift. And the kid's annoying. I don't want the kid to get his stupid Turbo Man doll in that movie. Arnold, I like Arnold. Sinbad has some funny moments in it, but I just don't like Jingle All the Way. If you do, that's fine. It's not a movie I would turn off necessarily. It's got its charm, and I do love. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say there. Oh man, I forgot. I lost my train of thought. But if it's on, I'm not turning it off necessarily. Like I said, it has its charm, but it's just not one of my favorites. Another movie I don't really like is It's a Wonderful Life. It's gonna sound terrible, and maybe it's an older movie and there's something about it, but I don't have a problem watching older movies. It just bores me. It just doesn't, I don't know, it's long. It's I just don't get into it. And it's funny because I talk about I love Christmas Carol, and it's got a little bit of that kind of redemption arc with it's George Banks, right? Jimmy Stewart's character. Um, wishing he was never born, then finding out what the town's like without him. It's not terrible. It's another one like, am I going to turn it off? No, it's just not one of my favorites. And for a beloved Christmas classic, I don't know. I just find it a little boring. That's all. And maybe I just am not cultured enough to enjoy that movie. But it's fine. Like Grinch, I hate. I cannot stand that Grinch movie. Turn it off. Jingle All the Way has its charm. Kind of stupid. Wonderful Life, good message, a little boring, just not my cup of tea, but I wouldn't turn it off. All right. My number one favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story. It's just, there's something so simple and pure about A Christmas Story. There's nothing over the top in it. There's nothing unrealistic about it. You don't have to suspend anything of disbelief. It's just a young boy wanting something for Christmas, on his journey on how to get it. It's a slice of life, right? It is just, it perfectly encaptures Christmas for your childhood, right? Again, a movie where the kid actor's really good. The little brother's kind of annoying, but he's supposed to be. Ralphie and his buddies, Flick and Schwartz, perfectly fine, normal 10-year-olds. Now, the movie takes place in 1940. Like, obviously, I wasn't alive in 1940, so I don't know how accurate it was to the times necessarily, but there's nothing really in it outside of like the radio and stuff like that really, you could put it in any year. It doesn't really matter what it necessarily relates to. The mother and dad, who you don't even find out their names, actually, it's just the old man and mom, are so well played. They're perfect. They're loving parents. They're not perfect. Guess what? That's what real parents are. I'm a parent. We are not perfect. Let me tell you something. I can tell you that all day long. But, you try to have a good heart. You try to do its best. And, the mom tells me you'll shoot your eye out. She's not trying to be mean. Just, I'm not getting you a BB gun. Goes to his teacher. She tells him the same thing. I love the Santa Claus in that movie. He's so like, just get me out of here. He's just trying to make a buck and, and do his thing. I love when he tells him he'll shoot his eye out. And I love, again, it's another movie that gets me right here. His dad is the only one he really doesn't go to in the movie about the BB gun, and spoilers. His dad's the one that ends up getting it for him. And I love the reaction when the mom's like, who put that back? He's like, oh, Santa Claus brought it, and he's like, I had one when I was 8 years old. Like, it reminds me a lot of my childhood, to be perfectly honest. And it's just, and the dad, he doesn't make him a perfect dad or anything, but I guarantee you, like me and my wife always talk about this movie. And we're like, I guarantee you they were sitting up in bed and the wife was like, "Oh, he wants this stupid BB gun for his birthday." And the dad's probably sitting there going, "Yeah, I had one, who cares?" And he went and bought it for him, after work one day. And it's just a great little movie that actually, I don't think it did very well in the theaters, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it was a flop necessarily. Again, it came out a little bit before I was born. Um, but I think it started to really take off. Um, I swear Christmas music just started playing it outside. Maybe something's happening here, but where was I lost my train of thought? Then it started doing that 24/7 on TNT during Christmas, and I think it became really popular through that. I could be wrong on that. Um, and a really unique style with the narration, which actually a lot of movies and stuff took from it. The Wonder Years was a very popular television series in the late 80s, early 90s, um, with Fred Savage and actually Daniel Stern. We just talked about doing the voice, and that was taken directly from A Christmas Story with the narration over the acting. And now you see it more and more. I talked about 8-Bit Christmas. That's another one where they do something very similar. So a lot of movies have taken from that and done it. And I love the narration of older Ralphie. It's just perfect. It gives you a sense of what he was feeling that Christmas. And just it just brings you back to it. That build up when you were a kid for Christmas. We can all remember that. And A Christmas Story just captures it perfectly. All the things. I love the fudge line. It was so funny as a kid because I never understood what that was. I didn't understand why he was in trouble for saying fudge. And then I love that, you know, the narration when his mom's got the soap in the mouth. Where'd you hear that word? And he goes, and the narration goes, "I had heard that word 10 times a day from my old man." And then when he says Schwartz and she calls his mom, she's like, "Do you know where Ralphie heard that? Probably from his father." So it's just a perfect little movie of just a normal family going through their normal Christmas, but with a lot of heart to it. And another very well acted movie by people I haven't seen a lot of other movies. Um, as well. So that is my top 5 Christmas movie list. Let me know your top 5 in the comments down below. Remember to like, remember to comment, and remember to hit that subscribe button. Merry Christmas, everybody. Sports are coming back. I'm not abandoning sports, but my gosh, I needed a break. The Mariners are driving me nuts. The Seahawks haven't won in a month. It stinks not having something positive to talk about. So I wanted to do that. Take care, everybody. Have a blessed Christmas. I'll see you guys before then, but have a good one. Like I said, let me know your top 5. Peace.